So
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
actually flying in the skies, and then I have a chase car, which is like a portable recharger coming on the ground. But like when we did that hop, hop, hop to get to the air show, we pre-scouted all of our landing sites because we didn't have permission to fly anywhere. We didn't have permission to land anywhere except at the airports. So we knew we could land at the airports, but in between the cornfields and all the silly places that we landed, um, we scouted that out in advance. We contacted the landowners. We made sure they were okay with landing. We
How
did
was
one.
that?
It
If
was
I,
hard.
let me give us a little intro. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Founders and Friends podcast brought to you by the Marble Institute of Technology. I'm your host, Riley Roseby, joined alongside Heather, the world's
Yeah.
first female flying car pilot. Now, you're going to have to give me a little bit of background as to how you stumbled into this exclusive area.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Getting a flying car was a dream. And so I'm a pilot. So about, I don't know, 8, 10 years ago, I got my pilot's license. And it was, gosh, probably the hardest thing I ever did. Right. And um, pilots have like a secret acronym language. So when you talk to another pilot, you talk about METARs and you talk about acronyms, and it sort of excludes everyone around you. Right. So my dad has been a pilot his whole life. And every time his buddies would come over, they'd talk pilot stuff, and I'd be like, I'd roll my eyes. And then when I became a pilot, I was like part of the club. So he got super interested in the flying car. And, at first I was like, the same thing. And then I started paying attention, once you get into all the pilot sort of environment, you really catch the fever. And so we would trek up to Oshkosh, and I know Oshkosh is coming up here, and we would see Marcus Lang, who was the inventor of the BlackFly, which is the flying car that we have. So for like 6 years, we trailed him around. Every time he'd go to Oshkosh, we would show up and we'd have these hats. And then we made shirts that said future BlackFly owner. And then we had like propeller spin hats, and we were at the front of the parade. And anyway, so they finally decided to sell to just like a handful of early enthusiasts, and we were probably one of the first people they called. So,
That is
six
amazing.
years of stalking led to us getting the nation's first flying car, and oh my gosh, what a ride it's been! I have to say, it's been wild. So,
Are you using
yeah.
it? You're not using it as a commuter or anything in that sense, are you? Or is it
That
still just a novelty?
Well, it's interesting. It has to start as a novelty, right?
Of
There's
course.
only right now 5 flying cars from Pivotal in the country. I think Jetson delivered their first one a few months ago. So they've just got a handful of flying cars. There's there's no like wide scale adoption or anything. There's just a few people who have it, and the capacity right now is 20 miles on a single charge and 20 minutes of fly time. So there isn't like a huge utility unless you're going to go back and forth to work. Like I'm not taking it to Home Depot to buy lumber or something.
But
So
imagine if you had a
uh,
ranch, right? And you had to get on the other side of your ranch.
that's
There,
actually
there are
ranching and
some,
farming.
yeah,
Yeah, it's one of the best applications of this because you could just take off from the barn, go out to the cattle. If you have a little payload, bring some feed or whatever you need to do to go check on your cattle.
that's right. We'll find the use
Yeah,
cases for it. We'll find the use cases for it.
yeah, we will. For now, we go up, we fly in circles, and we terrorize people on Route 1. So
How many,
they
how many
report us as
police
a
calls?
UFO.
I was going to say, how many police calls have been reported of, hey, there's something weird flying?
Well, there was a fun day where we decided to go to an air show with the flying car, and we said, "Oh, instead of trailer it, we're gonna fly." So to get to the air show, it took us 3 different hops to get there, and then 3 hops back. And when we did that we left in the morning, we left super early in the morning. We landed at the air show and there was like a big to do at the air show. Oh my gosh, the flying car's here. And then when we took off to go home, what we didn't realize was that between the morning and the night, UFO sightings have been blowing up all over Facebook. And every town we went to had like like one of those town Facebook groups that all talk about what's going on in the town, and they had been reporting the UFO sightings, and no one knew what we were. And then someone discovered we were at the air show, and then, like, the town Facebook people, they would say, "They're over my house right now. They're landing at Laurel Airport." And then we'd go and we'd land at Laurel Airport, and this, like, parade of cars was following us on the ground, and they just showed up at the airport when we landed, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, the flying car, this is crazy." So, it was, yeah, it was really funny, and that happened the whole way home, and we didn't realize that, there was this waft of people following the flying car down our route, and then they reported our route and reported where we were gonna be and where our next landing sites were gonna be, and they followed us all the way home. So, there was, like,
They got basically
900.
like a Santa tracker for you.
Yeah, it's a Santa tracker. Oh my gosh, NORAD. Yeah, that's one
That's
of my
right.
favorite things.
That's right. Okay, so I think it's really interesting. You have, let's call it Gen 1 of a flying car, right? I kind of
Yeah,
think about this first iteration of hardware probably being similar if we're looking at the arc within the cell phone of like the brick phone. It's this big clunky thing, expensive. Maybe the use cases aren't super in depth. There is some status appeal to it. But now today we have these, beautiful iPhones that can
right?
change the world if you know how to use them. And
Yeah.
how long do you think that progression is going to take on the aviation side before we have like the iPhone of flying cars?
I'm gonna be honest. It isn't how long, it's how much of a migration the technology takes in order to support autofly. Okay. So autofly, you know what auto drive is, right? We all know Tesla, auto drive, the cars can drive themselves, they don't need a pilot, right? In order for the airspace to mature to a certain level where every man can have a flying car, there has to be some sort of mechanism to make that safe for everyone. Right now, there's less than 10 flying cars in the country. I know where just about every single one of those pilots are right now. I can tell you what market they're flying in. I know I'm not going to run into them when I take off. It's not a problem at all. But as soon as there's 1,000 in the air, right, and they're all in my local area, well, we have to rely on technology to keep us safe. Initially, it'll be aircraft rules. So it's things like see and avoid. Right now, if I'm a pilot, right, and I see another aircraft, I just turn right. So if everybody turns right, we remain safe. So, but it requires us to be watching each other, right, at all times. But the new technology is allowing the vehicles to sense each other. So they could send out a signal and sense the other aircraft. Or we could have something called ADSB, where we're doing an actual screen of GPS where they're coming up on the GPS screen. And you can see them on the screen. Then you can look out and say, oh, somebody's getting close. And it sends you a warning, right? Somebody's getting close. So when that technology matures and we have the equivalent of auto drive and it's going to be auto fly, then everybody who doesn't have a pilot's license can jump into the car, call it the car, the flying car, right? And they can say, take me to Home Depot or take me to the grocery store, right? And off you go, and it flies there and it lands. And then, does it take a road? Maybe. Maybe it's a road in the sky, right? Is there a traffic jam? Is there three other flying cars? Well, it sensed those. It kept a safe area of separation between them, right? If it hit a jam up, it said, oh, make another road above, right? So it'll go
Goodness.
above. So you could have multiple layers of road. So instead of GPS where you have these, grid-based roads on a horizontal plane, let's think of every altitude as a new horizontal plane that could have roads on it. So you can imagine traffic is irrelevant at the point at which you could create another road on top of an existing road. But the safety, keeping those vehicles isolated from each other, it needs to be automated in order for this to go at scale.
Yeah.
So
Which
right
is
now,
I'm very grateful for where we're at with AI because I know that's going to play a very, very pivotal role in this.
it is.
And I look at,
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm a Colorado boy, right? So I'm a little bit of a nature boy. I look outside and you see flocks of birds, right? These massive flocks
Yeah.
of birds where there's thousands and they can fly in unison and they don't run into each other. Or you look at like schools of
Mhm.
fish and there's thousands of them and they're all swimming around and like there's some sort of connective collective consciousness within these species. And it's like if we could kind of reverse engineer that and put that forward on the aviation side, right? Like we have
Yeah.
the roadmap for how these things need to work if we just
Almost
kind of
like
look
group think.
outside. Well, 100%, 100% like
Yeah.
groupthink. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's going to happen when AI matures to the level that it can integrate with an aviation schema. So right now we have the FAA and we have air traffic controllers and you have aircraft in the sky, right? So if an aircraft takes off, there's somebody watchdogging all of those aircrafts and keeping them safe. Oh no. Um, turn this off. Sorry about
You're
this.
busy,
There we go.
sought after.
I forgot to turn my phone off. Yeah, so right now, um, the FAA has an air traffic controller that has to see those aircraft and make sure they're staying isolated from each other. So each air traffic controller can support a finite amount of vehicles in the sky, and the communication channels go aircraft to aircraft, aircraft to air traffic controller. There's lots of different ways we communicate. We can communicate over radios. We can communicate with automatic ADS-B signals coming into our GPS system so we can see other aircraft. But, until that's completely automated, what's going to happen is the air traffic controllers are going to remain in the driver's seat when it comes to keeping those aircraft safe. So, because there's only a limited number of aircraft that each air traffic controller can control, that means there's a limited number of vehicles that can go in the sky at the same time based on how many controllers there are. So AI has to take hold in order for this to adapt at scale. I mean, if you think about a single road, there might be 2,000 vehicles an hour going by a single point on a road, right? Air traffic controller can't control more than, depending on how you look at it, 20, 30 vehicles at a time. And we're talking about a commuter rate of 2,000 vehicles coming by, right? Every second, every 2 seconds. Well, that's untenable. And so the systems for control are going to have to take over. So,
Are you seeing, I mean, I know the FAA has talked about this modernization and this overhaul, and there seems to be within the current administration a little bit of an effort there. We are dealing with regulatory bodies though, so it's probably going to take more time than it should. Is there
yeah.
movement in that direction to have like a fully autonomous air traffic control system in place for
Yeah,
when these aircraft get online?
absolutely. Well, there's a really cool program going right now. It's called the eIPP program, which was signed by an executive order of Donald Trump into existence. So the executive order came, the IEPP program, I I can't say it right. Anyway, it went out to bid last November and then it's just been awarded recently. So I believe it's 8 awards and they're spread across. There's some in Texas, there's one in North Carolina. They're different types of tests. So one IEPP test is testing cargo, right? So cargo going from point A to point B and how those systems work. And it's in a defined geological area that where they're setting up systems for cargo. Another one is for transport, for human transport. There's one in Florida. So, and they're looking at setting up vertiports, I believe. I don't have all the details on everything, but setting up vertiports and um, doing air travel between specific locations. And so they're testing out a bunch of different models. I don't think anybody has the model yet, but I can do some sort of psychic predictions of which ones are going to win and how it's going to flesh out if you want. If
Well,
you
I mean,
want.
I
We've
think
been
it's
thinking about.
yeah, and I think it's super interesting your perspective of being a pilot in the traditional sense. So you've seen how these systems in these organizations work together and how change happens within aviation. And now that you're here on the cutting edge, you know, like how do you think this is going to play out? Do you think it's going to be continuing kind of in these test phases? Because
Yeah,
we're
initially.
close.
Yeah. There has to be a certain number of cumulative pilot hours, pilots behind the joystick, pilots in the seat, to be able to prove out certain elements of safety and certain elements of travel. And so until we have thousands of hours, right? I can't imagine that the FAA is going to move to change regulations, without some sort of database
Hmm.
to pull from and to look at how safety is assured. So we'll be relying on aircraft rules initially, but as that number of hours increases, they will stand up and take note. They will definitely have to.
Yeah.
So, um,
When you look at the
but
safety
it's
numbers,
happening, and
I was
yeah,
just going to say, you look at the safety numbers within traditional autonomous driving, right? That Waymo and Tesla are both putting out. And like it is night and day difference. Autonomous driving, letting the computers drive is, you know, 10x safer for humans. And you even just kind of go out to a road, your local roadway, like you're probably going to see somebody drifting in their lanes. Guarantee you'll see somebody texting on their phone. So like
yeah,
we're moving in that direction where we are proving efficacy of the autonomous technologies. But when we go in the sky, right, we're adding that third dimension. So it's like how much time is going to be required for that third dimension to be calculated into the mix for it to be safe.
yeah.
It's a
Well,
different
for
layer.
it to be safe, we need AI. We need AI to make it safe. If people without pilots licenses are able to fly, and there's a couple critical sort of things that need to happen. So right now, in order for me to get my flying car license, I actually go through the equivalent of what you went through to get your driver's license. So we're looking at a couple weeks of training. I need to understand the airspace. I need to understand the maneuvers to safely operate that. And I need to understand enough about airspace that I'm not flying into restricted airspace. I'm not violating a temporary flight restriction, those few things. But as a practitioner, I am the equivalent of what you would call an ultralight pilot, which is the only classification of pilot's license that doesn't require, it's the only classification of aircraft, sorry, that doesn't require a pilot's license to fly. So as an ultralight pilot, right? I can take off in any ultralight aircraft, go wherever I want, as long as it's in uncontrolled airspace. So I can't currently enter the airspace of any major metropolitan city unless the FAA knows I'm coming, unless I have communicated with the tower, unless I've gotten a tower clearance, unless I've gotten an FAA clearance, I can fly over congested areas. So I'm not allowed to fly over congested area, and I'm not allowed to fly into a city center. So the whole idea of get rid of my commute to work doesn't work yet. That doesn't mean it won't in the future, but it doesn't work yet. And as a practitioner, what's really fascinating is that this is something I didn't realize when I first started flying is I thought the aircraft itself was going to be the limiter, but it's not the aircraft so much as it is the vertiport. the place to land. I can't
We
put
need
down unless I
infrastructure.
have. Yeah, we need infrastructure. So there's recharging, right? There's one we solve that with a chase car, right? Instead of landing at the Tesla recharging center, right? What I do is land in a cornfield and then my whoever's my flying partner for the day, whoever's my handler, will drive up in a Cybertruck and will recharge by Cybertruck, or they'll drive up in the Nissan and we got a couple generators in the back and we recharge in the field and then we continue on. So I'm actually flying in the skies and then I have a chase car, which is like a portable recharger coming on the ground. But like when we did that hop, hop, hop to get to the air show, we pre-scouted all of our landing sites because we didn't have permission to fly anywhere. We didn't have permission to land anywhere except at the airports. So we knew we could land at the airports because that's aircraft. Okay. But in between the cornfields and all the silly places that we landed, we scouted that out in advance. We contacted the landowners. We made sure they were okay with landing. We
How
did
was
one.
that outreach? I'm curious, like, because
It was hard.
if I,
Yeah.
was a landowner and all of a sudden I get an email from somebody asking if they can land their flying car in my field, I'm like, okay, first of all, what are you smoking? Second of all, flying cars
Yeah.
don't exist. Third of all, are you going to light my field on fire? Like, heck no, I don't want that. So, like, what was the response rate for
Okay,
these
so we have
outreach?
really good luck landing at fruit stands,
Oh my
especially
goodness.
fruit stands that are run by pilots, right?
Brilliant.
I need
Brilliant.
sounds crazy, but they love it when we come because we bring in lots of traffic, right? And everyone buys fruit. So, but that is indicative of the future vertiport. Think about a vertiport. You're going to land and people are going to buy stuff, right? You're going to have
Heather,
a place where people gather. You're going to have viewing ports. This is a whole
airports are
new
coming.
industry.
They're becoming air
Yeah.
parks. That's my thing. Is the airport is becoming the air park, and if we do it right, it could be the hub of the city, right? But
They're going to become entertainment zones. I mean, there's going to be restaurants. There's going to be the viewing window, right? The big glass
parks,
viewing window where, yeah,
marketplaces, yeah, yeah. It's
a
it
whole
it
marketplace.
it flips the entire like economy, local economy on its head, right? Because you're no
Yes.
longer requiring roads, these kind of archaic systems that are in place to sustain that. Like you have now this meeting place, this air park, people can fly in,
Yeah.
I kind of think about it as like it's almost like you would have a farmer's market at an airport as well as a park, where it's just like this mash of all the people, and then you get your
Yeah.
goodies and then you fly back to your home.
Yeah, and I think what will happen, there's a really interesting thing about urban airspace versus rural airspace, right? If you think about rural airspace where there's no restriction to fly, I can fly anywhere in uncontrolled airspace, as long as I'm not in like an airport region or whatever. So if I'm in completely uncontrolled, not restricted, think of it like a web. I can fly if you have point A, point B, point C. I can fly any direction or any zigzag route I want to get there. But the second I go into an urban area, right, I need a very specific road in the sky and a very specific route because we need to ensure the safety of people on the ground. And so if you look at point A to point B going through an urban area and there's an office building here and here, right? I need to fly down the corridor and we need to have that ring fenced off so that I can't. So I hit an invisible, like a GPS wall and I can't go into that. Or a sensor goes out and says, don't go near those office buildings. So we have to have roads in the sky in an urban environment, and it has to be controlled by an intelligent brain that says, okay, only 7 people can be on this road at the same time between here and here because there's only 7 vertiport landing spots, right?
Yeah.
What happens when the 8th vehicle comes into the sky to land at the vertiport and every vertiport every helipad piece is filled, then it has to go somewhere else. So now it has to reroute along another route to get to either an emergency landing spot or another vertiport that's within a reasonable distance. And that has to be a safe route. So we know what the routes are. So if you look at routing, you take off, you go somewhere, you land, and there has to be an area of separation on this traveling traffic road to get to the vertiport. Well, what becomes very clear is that you're limited by the pads, you're limited by the vertipads. And so what you do is you hold your takeoff as opposed to try and reroute and route. So this intelligent AI system has to know how many people can go down at a particular time. It has to be able to say, okay, you can take off now, and you've got your place in the line on your way to the vertiport, and then you land, you've got your vertiport slot. So slotting and scheduling and all of that, which is very much a commercial airport style school of thought, needs to be integrated into the system of flying into an urban environment with an air taxi or a flying car. So,
Have you reached out to Palantir at all?
to who?
Palantir, Alex Karp's
No.
AI company? Because
Oh, not yet. No.
I feel like if there's anybody who is going to be able to grasp the complexity of this system, it would be them.
Yeah.
Um, I'm kind of trying to knock on some doors and whatnot, but like, I'm not the FAA with a US government checkbook to be able to help fund the research behind this.
Yeah.
But where they're at with
Well,
AI and ontology, like, this is just another brilliant use case for where they're at. And I was just curious if you had started making some outreach because
no,
you
I'm
talk
a
to people.
practitioner, right?
Okay.
I'm the one that flies. I'm not selling cars. I'm not developing any sort of software. I'm a flyer. I'm a pilot. I'm a, you know, I'm the person that gets in the driver's seat and goes and lands and says, "Oh man, we got a problem here." So I could identify all of these problems in the system, but I'm not the person that's going to fix them. I'll
No,
consult,
but
I'll
we
do
need
key.
we need your thoughts because the people who are going to fix them are probably not the practitioners, right? Like
Yeah.
the AI engineers are probably not having the same perspective and the same understanding because they're not pilots, or maybe if they are pilots, like that's a good combo. But the engineers need
Well,
the pilot's input so that we can build something that works for the pilots and is not just this sandbox perfect kind of in theory in practice type
yeah.
system.
Well, if you look at some of the models that are out there, they're absurd. If you look at some of the things that people are proposing, the vertiport infrastructure, some of the things that they're proposing, as soon as you're a practitioner, as soon as you sit in the pilot seat, you go, they just don't get it, right? They don't have any idea what they're in for. You can do the math. How long does it take to turn an aircraft around? Okay. What's the recharge time on any sort of air taxi, Joby, Archer? My recharge time is 40 minutes, right? And that's if I have two 240 jacks and I have the right charging and all of that. Otherwise, if I plug it into the wall plug, I'm at 8 hours on a recharge. If I am sitting in a vertiport pad for 8 hours and there's incoming traffic, the first thing they're going to do is say, "Hey, get a cart, move her off that pad. Let's move her." Well, now I've built my vertiport on top of a city infrastructure, right? So there's 4 pads. Where do you move me to? How do you get me off that pad? Can you move me down below? Well, now we're talking about hydraulics. Now we're talking about multiple levels. Okay. Can you even build that vertiport on top of an office building? Was it designed to hold a 2,000-pound vehicle? Like if an air taxi landed, and I mean, the weight alone, and then the weight of batteries and recharging and all of these things. I mean, it's just some of the stuff that's being proposed out there is utterly absurd. And then, as soon as you're a practitioner, you're like, "Oh, I get it. Okay, wait, nowhere to land. Okay, I need the vertiport." I need 6 more emergency landing vertiports all around it. So proposing a single vertiport infrastructure and, watching these big announcements. We made the first vertiport in the world and it's going to support all of this stuff. And I'm like, well, that's going to be about 12 vehicles a day. It doesn't make any sense. So you
That's
have to
Wall
use your
Street doing
brain.
Wall Street, right? Like we have to
Yeah,
have those press releases to get people excited for people to buy the stock so the companies have more money so that they can continue to
yeah,
operate. Like it's part of the game. It's all a part of the game. But it's great to hear your perspective and like being able to call it out. I mean,
yeah.
just you're talking about being a practitioner. I've started taking a few like pilot lessons, flight lessons.
Yeah.
Oh my
You should join
goodness,
our
Heather.
team. You
The
should.
complexity of flying and the fucking checklist that you have. And you're looking at the dashboard and you're like, if I push that button, am I going to fall out of the fucking sky? I don't know.
Right,
Right? Like
exactly.
I'm not
You're
sure
in the
what I'm doing.
cockpit and there's stuff everywhere, right?
We do need to
And you're
simplify. Yeah. Yeah. I just
like,
want to push a button, speak to it, say, hey, I want to go skiing in Aspen, boop, and
yeah.
then I'm off and running.
Well, it's called situational awareness, right? So I liken the pilot's license. I somehow made it through, right? I quit probably 3 times along the way. I would be on tour. I'd go on tour and I'd be like, "Okay, I'm going to accelerated pilot school." And then I would go and it would be like 3 or 4 days and then I'd go, "I can't do it." I quit. And then I'd quit. And I'd go back on tour. And the next time there was a gap in my touring, I'd go, "Okay, I'm going back to pilot school again."
What are
And
you
then
going
I
on
would get a
tour
really
for?
bad trainer. What?
What were you going on tour for?
Well, I'm a tour manager, so I manage huge activations for huge companies. So I don't know if you've ever seen the Rick and Morty TV show. I ran the Rickmobile, which is a 27-foot cartoon car. It's one of the highest volume merch shops ever to have been released into America. We did so much merch sales all across the country. So every day we'd set up the merch shop, sell thousands and thousands of dollars of merch, and then drive to the next city and do it again. So
Oh, we
that's
got
what
to
I do.
talk
I
more
work with
about that.
corporations.
We got to talk more
Yeah,
about that at a different time because that is super, super intriguing. I'm a bit of a fashionista and I've always wanted kind of like a storefront type thing, but like the idea of
yeah,
having it be traveling is really, really interesting to me. But
yeah. We could crank some volume through the Rickmobile.
that
That
is
was an
freaking
amazing
awesome.
tour.
Okay,
Yeah.
I do want to touch on though because you are doing a little bit of touring yourself for the flying cars, right? You have a few
Yeah.
keynote speaking events coming up. How did that all start? Where do you go to sign
Well,
up to be on a TED Talk? Like, walk me through that process.
it all kind of happened by accident. It was a series of events, right? So I'm a
Best.
tour manager. I'm running these huge tours for Coke and Air National Guard and doing these cross country tours. And I said, I love what I do and I love flying. Is there some way to combine those things? So I said, all right, this is the first harebrained idea. I'm going to get a flying car, right? So that was harebrained idea number 1. And everyone said, "You can't get a flying car." And I said, "Yes, I can." So I did. And then I said, "I'm going to be the first female pilot to get a flying car." Got that, right? Did that. And then I said, "I'm going to go on tour. I'm going to take my flying car all over the country and we're going to make appearances." So I did that last year. We teamed up with Electrify Expo and we got sponsored to do um, 6 different events of the Electrify Expos across the nation. We would go and we'd bring the flying car and put kids in the cockpit and say, "Oh yeah, flying car, here it is, sit in the cockpit." Well, this year we're doing keynote speaking. Um, so I built a website, heatherchirtea.com, my name.com. And then I started developing some story-based keynotes and I have a whole series of keynotes that we'll be doing in August, September, October. So the TED Talk came with Evolution Expo. So Evolution Expo is in Ocean City, Maryland. We're going to do a keynote speech there. And then I've got a TED Talk I'm sort of incubating right now. And that's going to be super funny. And then we're doing the Lake Tahoe Electric Transportation Forum. That's next
That's
month.
that's right.
Then yeah, and then that one's in August. There's another one in August that is for computer games. It's called Future Fest Connect, and that one's in Durham, North Carolina. Future Fest Connect is a computer game conference, and they wanted me to come in and talk about the future, but somewhere along the line, one of my pilots on my touring team is a game developer, and he said, "Hey, I want to make a flying car game." So I said, "Let's do it." So we have a flying car game that is approaching launch, and we're going to see it publicly for the first time at Future Fest Connect, where I'm keynoting that
Oh, I
one.
can't wait to learn about this. That is
Yeah,
so
it's
cool.
so we've been going out and licensing up all the future flying car models and getting their 3D models and um, designing them into a circuit game where you can fly racetracks. And then we're going to put in through GPS positioning and through Google Maps with a bunch of different things, technologies we're combining together. But we're going to be able to do place-based touring. So,
Oh my
um,
goodness.
like, we hope, fingers crossed, for the Ocean City show in September that we will be able to fly the flying car around Ocean City while keynoting the conference. So we want to set up like a computer center where people can actually fly in the game flying cars. So there's so that whole game development is
Can I
underway.
can I
And
make a
then
suggestion on the game development? I don't mean to interrupt, but
sure.
we're talking about
Yeah.
the complexities of figuring out this whole logistics infrastructure conundrum that is going to be a massive issue. I'm
Yeah.
wondering if we could use video games as a like learning tool to also help figure out what the best way to set this up is, right? Like kind of open source the idea and be like, okay, if you're some kid who's just brilliant and a big gamer, like maybe you can figure out how this network is going to come into play. And it's more like building the infrastructure for flying cars, like a Sim City type of thing. I don't know where that
Yeah.
is on your roadmap. That's probably way down the line, but like that could be really, really
It's
interesting.
It's sort of accidentally down the line. What's happening is that the game itself is becoming a training program for people who want to get their flying car licenses. And
Mhm.
so we're building in like the Part 103 stuff. We're building in vertiports. We're building in, places to land. We're building in circuits, racetracks, all of those things. So once we get through the racetrack system, right, we have a few tracks in, then eventually what will happen is free play, right? So
Oh,
set up an area, free play, go fly around, see other people, and try out all the different models of flying cars. And we're actually building a simulator for some of these flying car companies, which is really interesting. So as this game gets to be more public and gets scaled out after we get through launch later this year, there's going to be all sorts of opportunities for training, for advertising. We're building in a whole check out these flying cars, like a sales area where you can actually go in and, you know, obsess on your favorite flying car. Maybe you want to check out, something like the Jetson, or you want to check out the hover bike. Hover bike is one of the ones that we've licensed. And you can go in, you can hop on the hover bike and fly around and try it out. And then for vendors, like vertiport vendors, we have all kinds of advertising opportunities within the game, which is wild. So there's a whole new virtual advertising paradigm that's cropping up for Number one, for vehicle sales. Number two, for parts enhancements on vehicles. Get a better propeller, get a faster engine, get a this, get a that, and try it out in the game, right?
Yep.
For vertiports, for clothing. So we'll have a clothing line of like race car jackets with patches. And I have a couple clothing manufacturers who are, just watching from the sidelines, waiting for,
Good.
the
Let
ideal
them.
time to strike.
Let them. Yeah, let them keep observing. That is so freaking cool, though. And I love because that's going to inspire the next generation, which in my mind is what it's all about, right? Like, I feel like for the last 50 or whatever amount of years since we've had this like aviation innovation stagnation type thing going on, like, you haven't even really had the idea of like building a flying car or actually building a new innovative type of aircraft. Like that seed was never planted in my head as a kid. It was just like, oh,
Yeah.
we have Boeing, they make airplanes. Cool. Like it's not like, oh, I could go build my own airplane company. So I'm so happy that you guys are like really leaning into this area because you never know what kid is going to be playing that game and then maybe they turn out to be a flying car designer and stumble upon the iPhone of
Yeah.
flying cars.
And who's funding two of the conferences is workforce development for the states we're in.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's the states are really understanding that this is the future and this is, we have to raise the kids into it. This is supposed to be a $36 trillion market within a decade. That's
It's a big number.
that's nothing to sneeze at.
It's
It
a big
depends on
number.
which one of the analyst groups you listen to, but I
Yeah.
mean, I think there's so much room within the growth trajectory for a fund for flying cars. Like maybe there's a stock fund that is vertiport companies, FAA software, controllers, manufacturers, all of those things. We'll see a flying car fund happening. We'll see that developing. But what is so fascinating right now is that a huge percentage of the population does not believe that flying cars exist today. And so I'll give you an example. We went to Tulsa, Oklahoma a week ago, and we were doing demo flight at the Route 66, 100-year anniversary centennial of Mother Road. So
Yeah.
we're at Route 66, which is the route of transportation. AAA sponsored us to bring the flying car in. So AAA is looking at, a very forward thinking ideology about access to these types of vehicles in the future. And they're looking at it today. But we had the flying car on the news and in the booth. And this is a pilot town, okay? They've got jet fighter teams there. They've got drone manufacturing. They've got huge aircraft manufacturing in Tulsa. And every third person who came into the booth said, we saw you on the news and we're here because we didn't believe flying cars existed. And we're
Let's
here because
go.
yeah. And I mean, it wasn't just one or two people. It was like all day long, a constant steady stream of people who were like, I didn't believe it was true. And I'm here because I'm not only a pilot, but I'm an enthusiast and my kids want to see this and we want to sit in the cockpit and I want to see what those joysticks are doing, and learn to fly. So we would spend our entire day talking to a lot of pilots, a lot of practitioners, a lot of people who are just starting to understand that flying cars are not the future. It's like this seed, this infancy stage right now. And it was fascinating to watch that transformation in people from the time they walk up till the time they leave, because they come up and they say, I didn't think it was real, right? And so they have to see and check out, and they have sort of pointed questions based in skepticism, right? So, and then they go away and they come back, and a little while later they come back and they're like, well, tell me about the wing. How does that create lift? Or they have, some really salient aeronautical questions or salient questions like, how do you fly into the city? Can I take this downtown Tulsa? Can I, and then they go away again. And then they come back
And then they
again
come.
and their questions change to, "Where do I get one? How soon until this becomes wide scale?" They come to get to the point where you are, where acceptance has passed and astonishment has passed, and now they're like in a
Let's do it.
practical, yeah,
Let's
like,
do it.
"Let's do it. I want to be a pilot. Now how do I be a pilot? Now how do I get on board? Now how do I get my flying car? When can I get it?" And I have to tell them, nobody's shipping.
Yeah.
Nobody's currently shipping flying cars. So I think Jetson, if I believe the website, last time I checked, they had shipped less than 10 flying cars to anyone. Pivotal has shipped 5 that I know of to customers, and their next round of manufacturing will be out soon, but maybe not until the next calendar year. I don't know. They haven't released a launch date yet. So until next year, you can't even get your hands on one. So,
No. That's crazy.
um,
That's crazy.
yeah, and
Heather,
we're
this is
flying, right?
yeah,
We
yeah.
got 12 months, 12 months, we're gonna be going across America in shock and awe, and, we're gonna be on the evening news everywhere we go because 'cause we're always on the evening news every time we show up, and we're gonna, we're like somebody said it had a really poignant way of saying this. They said, "You are the point of the needle in a whole new era of transportation.
Oh
You're the
gosh, we might have to just end it on that note right there.
Yeah."
Holy smokes, that is brilliant. The point of the needle. Say that one more time.
They said, "You are the point of the needle on a whole new era of transportation forging forward." So, like, you can get that visual of, ooh, there's us right now breaking all the barriers, landing in the places we're not supposed to and trying to get permission and, forging the first vertiports and figuring out the airspace and figuring out, all that stuff. Boom, breaking the barriers and, being the first ones to call the FAA and say, "We're bringing a flying car to Detroit." This was mine this morning. "We're going to bring a flying car to Detroit." And they go, "What?"
Yeah, I bet you really catch their attention with that. But oh my goodness, Heather, thank you so much for doing this. I'm so thrilled to have you join us here. I know we're gonna circle back probably after all your keynotes and your own little roadshow that you got going on. But if folks want to connect with you, follow you, kind of stay in line with your process here, what's the best place? I know you mentioned your website earlier, and I'll be sure to put all these links in the show notes, but how else,
Yeah.
can we jump on the Heather bandwagon, watch you travel around in your flying car?
Yeah, well, go to heatherchirtea.com and um and that's the best place to start. But in October, we're going to be doing the Great American Air Race. Okay, so we're getting 3 flying cars and 7 pilots, and we're going to do flight maneuvers one at a time, not against each other, because I don't like that idea of putting 2 flying cars against each other.
Yeah,
But
let's
like
try and
land
avoid
on
the
your car.
accidents from day one as much as possible.
Yeah, no, we're not going there. There's a safety issue. That's not my thing. So we like to stay safe. So the greatamericanAirrace.com. The website's going up probably this week. It's coming. But keep your eye on that. That's going to be at Springfield Beckley in Ohio at that
Wonderful.
airport. And it's going to be like electric Oshkosh. It's going to be amazing. We have all kinds of moon bouncy houses and pilot things, and there's an incredible industry forum on mobility, and that's run by NAMC and the AAMI, the Advanced Air Mobility Institute.org. Those nonprofits are behind it, and so we're all teaming up to bring in industry experts and do air races and get people excited and have a kids STEM day and all that stuff. So
You're doing the Lord's work, Heather. Thank you so much for pushing this forward, for being a pioneer. And I'm so excited to have another catch-up call. Maybe before the end of the year. We'll see how it all shakes out. But
sounds great.
adios. Thank
I'll,
you.
s- all right, I'll see you in the skies.
That's right.